नमस्कार। राष्ट्रिय परीक्षा बोर्ड र नेपाल टेलिभिजनको संयुक्त प्रस्तुति कार्यक्रम परीक्षा सवालमा यहाँहरूलाई हार्दिक स्वागत छ। दर्शकवृन्द, हामी हाम्रा श्रृङ्खलामा निरन्तर रूपमा स्तरीकृत परीक्षाका बारेमा जानकारी दिइरहेका छौं। आज पनि हामी हाम्रो कार्यक्रममा स्तरीकृत परीक्षा र यसमा शिक्षकको भूमिका के रहन्छ यसका बारेमा जानकारी दिँदैछौं। आजका लागि विषय भने रहेको छ अनिवार्य अंग्रेजी।
नमस्ते। Today I would like to present on item writing. Especially this is the orientation for compulsory English for secondary education examination. So I would like to welcome you all in this presentation. Especially in this presentation, I would like to talk four different things. First, I would like to talk about the preliminary concepts of test, item writing, and standardizing test, especially the processes related to standardization. Then I will talk about learning domains or learning skills or cognitive skills that we expect the students need to achieve. Thirdly, I would like to talk about item categories, especially two types of items: selected response items and constructed response items that we have to develop before we take exam to our students. And finally, I would like to talk item writing with reference to secondary education examination. Especially, I would like to highlight English subject test items that we develop and that we administer for grade 10. So now first, I would like to talk about why do we need exam and what is our goal. Especially SSDP has clearly mentioned that exam reform will remain a major focus with the aim of standardizing exams and ensuring that exams assess competencies that students need to acquire in each subject. This is our national goal for secondary level examination. For that, we have to administer tests, because tests are very important components of curricula. Any curriculum has a test. For example, here Brown and Abhivikarma, they talk about tests are essential components of successful curriculum and one of several partners in the learning process. A well-constructed test provides accurate measure of the test taker's ability within a particular domain. So this is very important for testing students, not only to evaluate the students, but we have to certify them, we have to graduate them, for this test is an essential part. So we need to administer the tests which are valid, reliable, and practical. So we have to, as I show you all, here are some of the qualities that every test should have. Among the qualities, reliability is the most important factor that we have to maintain in any test. Reliability is the consistency, or it is consistent in producing similar results. If there is no more fluctuations in the student's score of the test that we administer, then the test is said to have reliability. So any test should be reliable. Second quality is validity. We design a curriculum, we teach contents, we administer, let's say, programs, and we test or we evaluate students. While evaluating students, we have to develop test items that should be valid. Valid test items should cover curriculum, should address objectives, contents, and constructs. For this, actually validity is the ability of the test to test what it is supposed to test. So this is the second most important criterion for quality test. Fairness is another quality of test. A test should be free from any sort of biasness, whether that is gender bias, regional bias, or let's say cultural bias. A test should, let's say, be free from this biasness. Another is practicality. A test should be appropriate in terms of level, cost, time, and efforts. It should not be, let's say, more expensive, as well as it should not be, let's say, less expensive. It should be it should maintain practicality. Finally, authenticity. This is very important, especially a test should be natural, a test should be contextualized, and test should be based on meaningful tasks. So students need to be engaged in meaningful tasks while testing as well. And finally, washback effect. A test should have an effect to bring change in teaching learning tasks, to bring change in teaching learning activities, even curriculum, and also testing itself. So that when a test has these qualities, then the test is said to be standardized. And for the last few years, National Examination Board is trying to bring these qualities in our test. So we have been working with item development and item writing. So for standardizing test or bringing the qualities that I talked about, we have to follow certain steps or certain processes. For example, the first process, as you see in the slide, establishing the purpose of the test. Why do we administer that particular test? Why do we administer? For the placement of the students, or to certify and validate our graduate students, or let's say diagnose the problems that students have regarding teaching and learning. So this is the most important, let's say, aspect of standardizing test. We have to establish the purpose of the test for bringing validity, reliability, so that we can certify students. Second is, we have to think over the coverage of the test. Our test items should cover the contents that we teach, the cognitive processes that we desire from, let's say, teaching certain courses to the students, and competencies and skills to be tested. For example, language curriculum. It has a course of compulsory English for secondary level, and that course has its contents, competencies, and skills expected from the side of the students. And if our test covers these, let's say, areas, then this is a valid and reliable test. Third step is item writing. This is very important phase of developing test. Teachers and item writers are engaged in writing items, test items that are administered in the test. Two types of items are developed in the case of language testing. We have to develop item cards. Item writers write items, selected response items and constructed response items in the item cards. And along with the item cards, or along with the test test items, item writers also develop marking scheme. The fourth step is pre-testing. Pre-testing is a process. When we write an item, we are not sure that that item is valid and reliable. The difficulty level and differentiation actually the item does, we are not sure about that. So we have to test, we have to pilot, or we have to pre-test, or we have to, let's say, bring pre-testing of the item. Once we pre-test the items, some items are selected, some others are discarded, and some others are accepted with minimum change and finalized and stored in the bank. These stored items will be retrieved in the final examination that we do for certifying students. Now finally, we finally administer the test. While administering the test, we need test manual. Test manual, when we talk about test manual, there are a lot of things. For example, we assemble the test, we develop an administration guideline, we, let's say, collect marking scheme, we score the students' answer books, moderate answer books, and interpret the test, and finally certify. So that for standardizing test, we have to follow these 5 steps. When we talk about test, the most important thing is we expect certain competencies from the side of the test takers. These competencies have been developed and have been studied a lot in the field of education. Bloom's taxonomy or other different, let's say, taxonomies or other different approaches of defining learning competencies and learning behaviors we can see in the literature. But they have a kind of consensus over these learning domains. They are also called learning domains, learning skills, or thinking skills, whatever you say, but these are common, let's say, learning domains. If you see here, remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. These domains frame us how to develop a test item that tests the competency of each of these domains. For example, remembering, this is the low level of thinking skill that we expect from the side of the test taker. For example, in this, let's say, domain, students are expected to recall and remember the information that they go through in the text. For example, students define, students duplicate the information given in the text, list or recall the information. Another domain is little bit higher domain than remembering, that is understanding. Examinees or students go through the text and they understand the text. For under this, they classify, they describe, they discuss, explain, or locate the information in the text. Second is applying. This is higher than understanding and remembering. Here, students learn certain text, and they are expected to apply their learned knowledge in the while solving the problem. So here, applying is very much important in our case, because students apply their learned knowledge in a similar case or in a new case. I will talk a little bit later. Now, analyzing, this is another, let's say, cognitive level, and in this level, examinees distinguish between different parts. Compare, contrast, criticize, differentiate. Now, evaluating and creating, these 2 levels are highest levels of, let's say, cognitive domain, learning domain. And students are expected to evaluate, argue, defend, judge, create, based on the knowledge they get from the certain text. So here, while talking about, let's say, these domains, this is very important. These three, for example, remembering, understanding, and applying one. These learning behaviors or skills are expected. These skills are actually concerned with reproduction level skills. Students use their lower order thinking skills to solve the problems or to answer the test items that we develop on the basis of these domains. And these three, creating, evaluating, analyzing, and applying two, these four, let's say, levels, actually they come under production level because students produce new information on the basis of the learned knowledge. So what do we expect from the students? If we expect some creative capacity, expect to evaluate creative capacity of the students, we have to develop test items from this domain, this area. And if we expect our students just to recall the information or give the information based on their understanding, we have to develop from this domain. So these two, let's say, levels of thinking skills, lower order thinking skills and higher order thinking skills, frame us how to design test items. And all teachers have to be familiar with these domains. Here, you see the difference applying two and applying one. This applying means, for example, a student learns something and he or she applies that in the same situation, that is applying one. But if the students apply their learned knowledge in new situation, that is apply two. Now, if so, based on these learning domains, what sort of test items can we design? Here are two categories of test items. Conventionally, we talk about objective questions or objective test items and subjective test items. Objective test items, here multiple choice questions, MCQs, fill in the blank, true, false, matching, clues test, these come under, let's say, objective test items. And subjective test items, for example, long answer questions, short answer questions, and clues test. For example, alternatives not given. Here clues in both places, but here alternatives are given, here not. So these test items are, let's say, subjective test items or subjective questions. And now, in terms of the nature of answering, how we answer these test items, in terms of this, we have two broad categories of test items: selected response test items and constructed response test items. These categories are based on whether examinees are required to respond to stimulus or they are required to select from the given alternatives. In this sense, here we can see the example of selected response test item, especially let's say MCQ. I encourage you all teachers, we have to make a practice of developing MCQs, which are MCQs are considered as most important parts of standardized test. Here, the example shows when an English writer says, "He walked like a dog," he means. Now here, you can see in this test item, when an English writer says is a context. It gives the context for the students. He walked like a dog, he means it is a stem of MCQ. And these four, for example, he walked over his meal so hard, he even chewed on the bones. Distractor 1, he ran very fast. Distractor 2, he slept a lot and hardly walked at all. Distractor 3, he walked very hard is the key. Let's see. This is the format of MCQ, And we all teachers should be familiar with this format, and we have to develop this sort of test item. And in this, let's say, test item, examinees are required to select the key from the given distractors. Another example is from constructed response test item. You can see the poem, stanza of a poem here. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over valleys and hills. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, besides the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. This is from a grade 10 textbook. And in this stanza, you can develop, from this stanza, you can develop a constructed response test item. For example, in the stanza of a poem above, who has been compared with a cloud? In this test item, examinees are required to supply the answer themselves. They are not given the alternatives. Now, after you get familiar with these two types of test items, we have to be familiar with our modality of test item construction. For example, SEE has developed this modality. The blue one, you can see here, this is conventional, let's say, learning domains or thinking skills. And we have to, let's say, our curriculum has framed in these four, let's say, levels of learning behavior or thinking skills. The knowledge, that is the lowest level of thinking skill. Comprehension or understanding, that is another. And application, that is higher, a little higher. And finally, higher order thinking skills, for example, creating, evaluating, and analyzing. These, let's say, learning domains come under this. So, I request you all teachers to develop test items for SE or other grades as well, for grade 11, 12, and even for lower grades. We can develop test items in this framework. Sometimes some test items could be from knowledge level, some from comprehension level, some from application level, some from higher order thinking skills. In this, let's say, test item, you can see here a paragraph from a text. And the paragraph can be used to develop different test items of different levels. For example, if you see here, the test item here, what was the ultimatum that Yogamaya confronted the ruler with? This is a story. This is a paragraph from Yogamaya that is generally taught in grade 10, but the paragraph can be used to develop different levels of test item. The first test item you can see here is, what was the ultimatum that Yogamaya confronted the ruler with? This is, the students can go through the text and they can locate the information, so that this is knowledge level question. If you want to examine students' little higher ability, you can go to next level, that is comprehension level or understanding level. For example, why did Yogamaya, along with her 68 of her followers, end their lives into the thundering current of the Arun river? Now, to answer this test item, the students have to comprehend the whole paragraph. Now, they answer the question based on their comprehension. But higher than this, you have to go to the application level. For application level, you have to develop the question like this. Suppose you are Yogamaya. What two things do you think you demand for ending the present-day gender injustice in Nepal? Yogamaya was, let's say, Yogamaya carried out her, let's say, protest or campaign against the then ruler in the past. But students go through Yogamaya's story and they can get, or they can comprehend the text, and they can apply the knowledge in their current situation. For example, in the current situation in Nepal, gender discrimination and gender injustice is very crucial, and for that students can use their learned knowledge in the current situation. Next stage, please. You can go to the higher order skills. After Yogmaya's death, what might have been the reaction of the government? Now, this is totally related to creation or judgment. So, this is the highest level question. And these orders, the order shows that from knowledge level to higher order skills, how you can see the difficulty level, growing difficulty level of the question. Now, the course of compulsory English has mentioned this specification grade in your course. You can find the link here and you can download the course from there and curriculum of compulsory English from there. And it shows listening carries 10 marks, speaking 10 marks, reading 40 marks, and writing 35 marks. And the course and specification grade also informs the test designers how and what sort of test items to be developed. For example, for reading skills, there are two types of test items. Seen text. Two test items are asked from seen text, reading text. Students are given reading text and two reading text. One carries only 5 marks and another carries 10 marks, and students are expected to answer. But while developing test items, as I have given in the slide, we have to be based on these constructs. Reading for gist, reading for specific information, reading for main ideas, and reading for deducing the meanings. These are the constructs, and we have to develop any two of the constructs while, let's say, developing test items from seen text 1. Similarly, any two constructs can be used to develop test items for seen text 2. I have mentioned here what test items could be developed: multiple choice, sequencing, fill in the blanks, matching true, false, and short answer questions. And on seen text, students are expected to, expected to answer the text, answer the test items. Actually, text is not from their reading textbook. That is from outside, and students are expected to answer that. Here are two, let's say, test items in that sense. Two questions: unseen text 1 and unseen text 2. And unseen text 1 carries 10 marks and unseen text 2 carries 15 marks. And what could be the areas or content areas that we can, let's say, ask the test item from? You can see here for unseen text 1, news stories, menus, notices, manuals, advertisements, and so on. You can see in the curriculum. And for unseen text 2, you can see stories, essays, letters, and so on. So these text should be included in unseen, let's say, reading. Now, for writing skills, there are again 4, let's say, test items. Guided writing 1, you can see what should be the construct for guided writing, and you can see what the marks that has been allocated for guided writing 1, and you can see text content that we have to develop guided writing test item. Guided writing 2, you can see here it also carries 5 marks, and let's say you can see the text or context you can develop from. Now, free writing. For free writing, you can ask a dialogue or paragraph, personal experience, short stories, and so on. It carries 6 marks. And free writing 2, you can see here, let's say you can ask students to write personal or informal letter, formal letters, essays, descriptive, narrative, cause and effect essays, newspaper articles, reviews, film reviews, book reviews. These are the text or content areas that you have to develop guided writing 2 test item. For example, you can ask students to write a personal letter describing about the historical place they have recently visited, or let's say a personal letter for their friend who let's say lives in the US or something like. Now, then after finally the curriculum suggests these are the content areas for testing grammar. In this column you can see contents, grammar items to be covered. For example, article, preposition, question tag, concord, transformation, tense, reported speech, voice, connectives, cardinal verbs, causative verbs. And for test item 1, you can see here in the let's say column, for example, question tag, transformation, tense, reported speech, voice. Only it carries 6 marks. And grammar test item type 2, it carries 5 marks, and you can ask from article, preposition, question tag, concord, tense, reported speech, voice, connectives, cardinal verbs, and causative verbs. While developing these test items, type 1 and type 2, type 2 is purely concerned with grammar in context. A paragraph is given, there are some gaps and alternatives should be given, and students have to select the key from the distractors or alternatives. So this is grammar type 2. Now, National Examination Board has developed a clear framework for designing test items for English, compulsory English. We have to be familiar with this. The test items that I talked about, they are for reading and writing skills and testing grammar. While developing these test items, we have to develop in the framework of item writing. There are 2 types of test items I have already talked. First is item writing, especially selected response item, and second, constructed response item. When you write a test item, you have to practice writing a test item in a similar card. For example, here you can see code. This is subject code. This is unit or chapter that you have to write from your book, and topic. Topic has a special code. We have developed that, and you will get that after NAB, let's say, informs you. And cell number in specification grade, we have developed elaborated specification grade from your, let's say, specification grade, and the codes are given there. And format and learning behavior, we have to specify the learning behavior here, and final. Now here, whether the test item after piloting is selected or rejected, it is based on, it is written here. And finally, when it is selected, then we apply, we, let's say, administer that test item in the final exam. For example, here you have to see, this is objective. Objective is, let's say, missed here. Objective, what is the objective of the test item? To test the ability to use a correct form of verb. This is the objective of the test item I am developing here. Now item here, do you know tomorrow is Virat's birthday? Do you know tomorrow is Virat's birthday? Steam, oh really? Are you anything special for his birthday? Now this is a STEAM. This is the main part of the test item, and these are the distractors. You can see A buy, B bought, C going to buy. Now, the students or examinees are expected to choose from these distractors for this gap. Now, the item card has also marking scheme, answer key for selected response item. This is the answer, and this answer should be written while developing a test item. This is another, let's say, test item, for example, constructed response test item. You have already gone through the test item that I developed while talking about Yogamaya. In that, let's say, paragraph, the paragraph is concerned with reading comprehension. Here, what is the objective of the test item? To test the ability to comprehend the text and apply the learned knowledge in the new situation. This is apply to, application or apply level 2. This is higher level, let's say, we talked about 4 different categories, 4 different learning behaviors, and this comes under application. Suppose you are Yogamaya. What 2 things do you think you demand for to end the present day discrimination in Nepal? Now here, the test writers are encouraged to develop marking scheme as well. For developing marking scheme, you have to give the possible answers that students can write in their answer books. Here, we have asked about just 2, let's say, things, but we can give 4 or 5 concepts that students possibly write in their answer book, so that no students get, let's say, penalized for their answering. Here, two among the following possible answers, if students write, for example, no gender violence or girls' education, safety and security to female children as violence against them is increasing rapidly. Students, the marking scheme should give all these possibilities so that students can be given marks for their possible answers. Now, once again, I would like to revisit the learning domains and what we want through this orientation. I want to talk again, 2 types of learning behaviors we are talking about. Lower order thinking skills, in which students are expected to reproduce the learned knowledge, reproduce the information, for example, remembering, understanding, and applying one. There, in these test items, we expect our students to go through the text and locate the information or supply the information given in the text. Then, higher order thinking skills, these skills are concerned with production level. Students are really expected to produce new knowledge. For example, applying to, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. These domains come under this. And currently, National Examination Board has deeply realized that most of the test items that we have been administering in our final exams come under, let's say, the lower ball. On remembering, understanding, and applying one. Not mainly from this ball. We are not incorporating these learning domains. So, we request our teachers, we ourselves, to develop test items from this ball as well. We have to address these learning domains or these competencies as well, so that we can really evaluate our students and their creative capacity. Finally, SE standardized is expected to ensure valid, reliable certification of the learning achievement at the level of individual student at the end of grade 10. Not only 10, NEB has also started its intervention to grade 11, grade 12, grade 8, and even encourage the teachers of lower grades as well. So this presentation gives you a framework how we can develop the test items from lower level thinking skills as well as higher order thinking skills. In our exam, we have been running exam for years, and we have evaluated our students. Yet now the time of standardization has come, and we have to develop test items that really judge the students' let's say creative capacity, judgmental capacity, and their ability to use their learned knowledge in newer situation, so that our exam becomes valid, reliable, and practical and authentic as well. So we can certify our students in that way, and our exam will be recognized wherever we go to the world. Here, while standardizing test, I have already talked reliability, validity, fairness, practicality, authenticity. When we maintain these qualities in our test, then we can maintain quality education to quality education. So I request you, all participants, all listeners, to join hands and bring change. And this is my request from the side of compulsory English. And I request you all English teachers to develop test items, join with NAB, and use better test items while evaluating your school exams, while evaluating your students in your school exams as well. Thank you so much. Thank you.
यो कार्यक्रम यहाँहरूले नेपाल टेलिभिजनको वेबसाइट www.ntv.org.np र युट्युब च्यानलमा पनि हेर्न सक्नुहुनेछ। हवस् त, आजका लागि कार्यक्रमको समय यति नै। तपाईहरू नेपाल टेलिभिजन हेर्दै गर्नुहोला। नमस्कार।